The higher powered tools are probably better in shorter lengths of exposure. They're there to move maybe the physiology a little bit faster. If you have something broken and need it to heal, get inflamed and need the reduction of that inflammation, that swelling, whatever it may be, you're going to see that move and move rapidly when you use a high-powered device.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we explore the survivor's journey, practitioners making a difference, and the therapeutic treatments and transformational technology that allow the body to heal itself. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I am live in Austin, Texas with Dr. Amanda Meyers. We're sitting here with some beautiful echinacea tea. We have desiccated bull testicles on the table.
It's been an exciting day so far.
I know. I have to say to the audience, we talk a lot about technology here, a lot about frequency and pulse electromagnetic fields, and you're someone that I've followed for a while in the MagnaWave universe. Mm-hmm. We met at MagnaCon in 2021. Mm-hmm. And can you tell me your role or your involvement with that company?
So I've been working with them probably for the last decade, just in and out, and more of a consulting role initially, and then have moved into, as they have divided their company between more of a veterinarian line and then attempting to break waters into the human arena, have become their medical director for their human side of their evolution, which has been exciting.
Yeah. And you're a doctor. What are you a doctor of?
I do pediatric emergency medicine. So I am 18, 21 and under in emergency departments in children's hospitals predominantly.
Wow. And you work all over the United States.
I do. I did academics for a very long time and jumped out to do locums work now. It's just fun to kind of go different places and see different protocol, sort of approaches and so forth. So it's been a good transition in my arena, and it has allowed me to work more intimately in PEMF with a MagnaWave, and Aura Well is our human side. So
yeah. So going into that a little bit, medical doctor, ER, pediatrics. When did you first become aware that pulse electromagnetic field held value to the human body?
So Verlinda, my partner, met Pat Zemer, who was the founder of the company, he and his wife, Dee Dee. Actually, in a very different fashion. They met in a marketing conference out in San Diego. And at one point, Pat contacted Verlinda and said, "Hey, I think I might pull you into the company for marketing purposes." And when they met and discussed what it was, Verlinda came home and said, "You've got to check this out. Like, this is potentially something that's very interesting." And she does that a lot. So they've reviewed through lots and lots of things in the holistic wellness, mental health, et cetera, arenas. And a lot of which you kind of go, no, that MML is not for me. You know what I mean? So,
yes.
But this, when I read through and did, looking into it, the research is there and it's fascinating and it's powerful on a level that is interesting without really a ton of things that I can find that actually go wrong with it. So from a human health perspective, I'm always sort of looking for that thing that moves that needle of health, that's non-invasive, that, transitions people in a way that is helpful and that you don't have to be on a product for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to hear in your terms, if you met someone on the street and they said, "What is this PEMF?" How would you describe it to somebody?
So not to get too nerdy and physicsy about it, I say, it's a device that creates a magnetic field, and magnetic fields treat the very core of our cells, which are, in principal terms, electrons, neutrons, and protons. Magnetic fields take the movable part of our cell structures, which is the electron, and it spins them in their correct way, which allows a cell to function. So if you have a cell that isn't functioning, then we can potentially help it in its environment become more stable, position itself correctly, and in other avenues and mechanisms, give it some energy, some oxygen, some blood flow, so that entire area will heal. So we can apply this kind of magic box, if you will, to lots of different areas of the body and see good results from it. We've got a lot of interesting data in migraines and depression and PTSD, things that are all sort of chemically balanced brain situations. We've got great data in bone and healing, from non-union fractures all the way down to just normal. I broke my bone and I needed it to heal fast. We've got some interesting data in soft tissue ulcers and the diabetic arena, especially where they're super challenging to help heal. And we're watching them improve. So we've got lots of areas that we apply this to that are, if you're in medicine and in science, you kind of scratch your head and say, well, how is it doing all of that?
Yeah.
But it really does boil down to that very primary cell structure of electron, proton, neutron.
Yeah. I like this. And I hope you don't mind if I offer my understanding of this. And I'm always amazed to look at the science and why does it help so many things, right? It's not that it is self-directed. Like you said, it helps the smallest mechanism of the body function better. And so I kind of quote these things from some of the forerunners in the industry of people who write often on the topic. I'll talk about the ability of a pulsed electromagnetic field to recharge the transmembrane potential. The idea that there's a net positive, negative on the inside and the outside of the cell. By increasing that differential, we have the cell breathe, make more energy, and dump its garbage. The idea that the pH of the cell, the oxygen environment is improved by using this pulsed electromagnetic field. Is that valid?
It is. Yeah, because again, if we're getting things oriented correctly in positive and negative structures, right? Electrons are negative, protons are positive, then neutrons are neutral, right? So we're looking at the primary cell structure, but we're also looking at gradients of things moving across cells that cause movement of a functioning arena. So we need to move sodium and potassium and chlorides and there are sort of anion and cation components of a cell. So as we build the correct layers of these items, either inside or outside of the cell, then the cell can perform its action, right? So that's the transmembrane potential that we're talking about. If that lowers too far, that cell becomes dormant, stagnant, non-functioning is where it will end up. So if we can, again, get that orientation correct, then that cell will be primed to do its job correctly. If we spin electrons through the mitochondria, electron transport chain area, that's the last step of a Krebs cycle. So to build energy in the body, we have to convert molecules, AMP, ADP, into ATP, which is the thing that is the gasoline for all of our cells. And the very last phase of that is to go through the electron transport chain, which is where we spin electrons in order to produce more energy. So we can set a cell up to work. We can increase energy through the electron transport chain, which will then give gas to the cell to be able to work. We create a lot of nitric oxide through calcium calmodulin pathways. So we're vasodilating or opening all of our vessel structures up, which means we get better blood flow to an area. If I can orient a red blood cell correctly, where we have the negative sort of construct on the exterior of that cell, more positive on the inside, then that shapes the red blood cell correctly so that it can load up with oxygen. So if I load up all the red blood cells, I improve blood flow to an area, I set up a cell's membrane potential to work correctly, and I funnel it energy, then the whole system can work. So we're bringing in nutrients, we're getting rid of trash, and we're actually, whatever the mechanism of that cell is for your functioning body to perform, it will begin to perform it for you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of describing it. I've also understood, or I've heard people mention the idea that, yes, it sets a cell up to make more energy, but it's possible that it's helping with enzyme activity in the cell, because at the end of the day, yes, we need more ATP, adenosine triphosphate, but we also need that enzymatic action to utilize the currency, correct?
Correct, yeah. And so we thought we were going to be magicians of the universe when we cracked the DNA code. And then we all kind of went, wait a minute, just knowing where that is doesn't really help us, because DNA is the instruction book for the body. It kind of opens and closes itself at the moments that we need it to for different instructions to occur. So RNA became the focus. And then Well, we looked at maybe then downstream from RNAs protein, but in real, shoe leather on the pavement terms, it is the enzyme that matters. So if your enzymes aren't being produced correctly or being provided the energy to be utilized or working in an environment that's actually communicating with itself, that's part of the process as well as all of our cells sort of transfer electrochemical information between themselves in order to talk. And if we're talking correctly, then our enzymes are used correctly as well.
Yeah.
So we need an entire environment primed to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's so exciting how dynamic the body is and how many you start to talk about the body, DNA and RNA and the electrical body and the physical body, how many pathways that we don't yet understand that the body is able to wire around a very big problem when we say, wait a minute, you have that. You need to fix that until you can get well. All the times we see this disproven in medicine, right? Where like the body will somehow circumnavigate a path, like life finds a way. It's incredible.
It is incredible. And the body does that a lot, right? I mean, it takes multiple cells not working well before the body even pays attention to it.
Yeah.
And so it's problematic in that you don't feel bad until you're pretty far down the path, right? So trying to tune your health in front of that is always sort of, the way we want to do this prevention sort of model for us. But in real terms, a lot of people end up with really large tumors or really big masses or really big, challenging problems before they're diagnosed. And we have a strategy to then help you get health back from that perspective. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So with that, and then so we just talked about this great technology. We talked through its mechanism of action, what we understand it to be. Where does it come in for you in somebody's wellness paradigm? Let's take disease off the table and just look at the idea of this properly functioning body. Where would you incorporate PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field, into a wellness paradigm?
I mean, globally speaking, we should be getting exposure to PEMF regularly, which is go to your park, walk outside, be in a non-concrete, non-rebarred, structured facility, right? Or space. And so, what we've done in our world is made ourselves so much more comfortable. We've climate controlled ourselves. We've got great, plumbing and sewer and all the things that make life comfortable for us. But what we've done is we've also caged ourselves in a little bit of a way, right? So we're not exposing ourselves to what we should normally be seeing in our lifetime from an exposure to, the Earth and its magnetic fields and all of the planets that kind of transition where we are in our time continuum with our world. And so if you're that kind of person, then arguably PMF exposure daily would be the ideal scenario because you are tuning cells. And unfortunately in this world now too, we live in just electromagnetic smog, right? I mean, it's everywhere and it's going to get a little worse. It's going to get interesting with all of the 5G that's going up everywhere because they're very high frequency, very short distance, sort of bursting chaotic energy forces. And so as we're exposed more and more to that, the question is, how much will I kind of need to correct, on a daily basis, from that perspective. So it'll be interesting to see what we do with our health in the next 5, 8, 10 years. So
yeah, I would love to hear also. And then if we look at the body's response to PEMF, let's just put on, as a medical doctor, what are some things you might expect to see change or shift in somebody's a basic blood work panel? Is there anything that we see show up if let's say a person's doing 5 days a week, 30 to 40 minutes of PEMF therapy at I don't know, a strength or a resonant rate to call out, but a healthy dose?
So I feel like it takes a long time to make blood work go bad, realistically speaking. And we're a little limited on, unless you're doing really high sensitivity, specialized testing, your average blood work panels are probably not going to shift a ton. Your CBCs, your liver functions, your thyroid functions, those types of things may not adjust a ton, but you yourself will feel much better. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have a clearer head. You're going to be less stressed. It will take more for your body to become ill if you were exposed, to different entities, which we all are at this point in the game. It's hard not to get exposed if you just go to the grocery store. To large, layers of individuals who come from all different kinds of places. And so your exposures are exponential from that perspective. So I think the key is if you do have an illness, though, then that does shift numbers, right? So If you're kind of just health tuning, then you may not see a ton of change on blood work. But if you're ill, then arguably over time, as we correct the way the body is working and clean out debris, those numbers should improve and look better.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite magical experience that you've heard from your community of somebody that was struggling with something? They started doing PEMF and they had an amazing post-intervention response.
I mean, those stories are, the most recent one, we're working with a gentleman right now who is 79. He's fascinating. He had a knee replacement. And in 2.5 weeks, he can get back up into his truck that he wanted to drive and has like 108-degree range of motion that he's just thrilled with. He got off of his pain control 3 days earlier than he was supposed to. So it's just a winning story kind of all the time, which is super fun. So yeah. We have an individual we worked with for a very long time. She had migraines since she was a kid, like daily, weekly, like always having that issue. She fell actually and injured things in her system. She had some bruises and that type of stuff that we were treating. And because we were doing that, we also treated her head. And of course, it didn't take very long. She really doesn't have migraines anymore, which is kind of fantastic. So she calls maybe every 3 months or so and says, hey, I think I might be too stressed and let's do a treatment, and tunes her up and she's great. So it's
Incredible.
just, it's life winning when you get mobility back, when you get, pain-free, stress-free days from that perspective. It's a game changer for anyone,
Yeah, I love the stories that I get to hear all the time. It's an inbox, it's a DM in Instagram that says somebody, oh my God, I didn't expect I would be pain-free in 2 treatments. Or sometimes it's so funny because I'm sure you've heard this. You've had people on both ends of the spectrum that people don't always get the results they want. And then you'll have another person and it's like they're like chucking away the walker stories. And you're like, what is that? And so with that idea that we have these dramatically different experiences, why the variable? If you put a coil on your body, and for everybody not knowing what PEMF is, it's an amplifier with a cord that is in a coil based on Tesla's design to broadcast energy. And you sit there and essentially your body is getting filled up with this extra energy. You're having a magnetic wave that I believe is expanding and collapsing on itself. It's not attenuating or a warming tissue. It's moving these electrons. Why do we have these varying results with people?
So it's a great question. And some of it, I think, is the base of the disease. Like nerve processes just take a lot longer. So if I'm healing nerves, it's like a millimeter a day. And we've got great data that says that we can take nerves that have been, just bruised or squeezed, or if we've had them actually almost like in a crushed layer, or if we cut them, we can actually heal all of that, which is great, but it's a time factor, right?
Yeah.
So, and then there's the discussion that the nerve has. So the nerves are layered with insulation called myelin. Myelin comes in little sort of capsule train car looking pieces, and the information has to jump from one train car to the next in order to be propagated, as we say, to go all the way up into the brain and then get interpreted. So if the nerve is talking too loudly, it's in an outside voice, not an inside voice, then we feel things differently, right? We get hyperacusis, we get, wind blowing across arms that feel like shards of glass happening instead of, a normal light touch sensation.
Yeah.
So you have to, there's a combination of things that has to occur in order for that area to behave better. So part of it is, what is the core problem? Part of it is, how long have you had it, right? So the longer term these things are, commonly, there's a lot to dig out of from that zone into a healthy, functional zone. So some of it is length of time, some of it is the core problem itself, and then some of it is just how many other things are wrong also, right? So how toxic is the system in general? And when do we get it detoxed? When do we get it functioning correctly? How do we get it to behave more normally? And then are you actually doing other things different, in your world? Because if you keep doing the same thing, this might never change, right? So it takes a combination of things to make it really work and happen.
Yeah, I go into this a lot. The extreme amount of variables that we face as human beings. Well, we just walked through how complex the system is, and also knowing how differently we each choose to live our lives. I take for granted all the time that, well, everybody must know what a cold plunge is, and everybody must be in the sauna 3 times a week and some full body red light and some desiccated testicles on the table with, this just nutrient dense palate that's incredible. And I forget that many people don't eat that way. They don't always have not only the access to income to eat that way, but also the awareness that that might be good. If you walked into my kitchen right now, and for everybody at home, there's like it's desiccated blood, it's desiccated organs, thymus, lung, because I'm getting these desiccated organs from the full part of the animal, which they're incredibly nutrient dense. But you could think that's really weird. And I probably like a 0.01% of the population. There's a practice that I do. I'll send my hair or armpit hair away every 3 to 4 months. I'll have that processed in a lab with chemicals, and they give me my ratios of minerals that are existing in my system so I can see what my mineral balance looks like. I look at the body like a battery, so I'm always examining what are the different things I can test, not guess, and understand what I might have a little control of as far as a variable. With that being said, in your experience, like let's just say an avatar in the United States, right? We've got our average, we'll call it the standard American diet. Standard American diet, standard American movement protocol, standard American hydration platform. Like what are she's shaking her head, ladies and gentlemen.
This is not a good setup.
I'm asking you, what are the big ones you would tell people to change to have the greatest possible outcome using some of these different technologies we're mentioning?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to stop shopping in the center of the store. You have to start shopping in the perimeter. If you don't stay in whole food that is not preserved and is not chemical, this will never change for you, period. So, I mean, we can look at that in lots of different ways. How many steps away from the sun is the thing you're holding in your hand? Could you run it underwater and still eat it or not? There's a lot of little, think about it and make it easy sort of situations. If you're not eating organic, which simply means we did not spray a pesticide on top of whatever it is that's growing, right? You can get into all kinds of layers of organic things. But the key is pesticides never leave your body. So unless you do really interesting detox programs, the chemicals that they spray on things that are growing will never leave you. And they change every piece of chemical sort of processing that your system will do permanently. Mm-hmm. And you can't expect to survive with that in play every day, right? So overly processed food, overly chemicalized food that's more chemical compounds than it is actually food is a problem. You have to move. The body is built to move. If you don't move, things don't stay in their correct positioning, and you will end up with cantilevered weight, which means we get knee pain and back pain and we blow things out, and then everybody's getting replacements for things that if, keeping them in shape, keeping those muscles strong, keeping those joints aligned, may have prevented across the board. And we are largely water. Your water matters so much. Arguably 90% of us is a water-based item. Like wherever we are, the cell has water inside of it. It has water outside of it, right? So if you're not drinking water and plenty of it and healthy water, that's a total problem. So the whole picture becomes kind of grim if none of those things are in play. And we could use tools and technology to biohack you like PEMF in order to get you feeling better. But if you don't make the commitment in your personal life to change those things as well, then we're temporarily changing something for you that you'll never see real impact factors from in a long-term way.
Yeah, it can it can take the role of a drug. It can just, especially if we aren't doing these dynamic changes within the terrain.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start this episode, I need to mention how I've upgraded my oral health and my immune system response in the last 30 days. I started using a supplement called Silver Biotics, and they have a line of products that incorporate silver, a century-old technology, utilizing silver, which is a metal with the highest electrical conductivity on the planet, but they've biohacked silver and literally surrounded these particles with a molecular coding that allows it to work much, much better. And when I say much better, I mean they have 420 independent studies, 60 patents, and it is 4x more potent than any silver on the market. So this is going to work on things like bacteria, mold, fungus. My result, or my N equals 1, is my gum health. My gums are like pink and glowing. They look amazing. And then I've just had a better balance, or I would say an even immune response after about a month. I would have you have this in your cabinet. If there's one thing we overlook, it's oral and dental health. And every single tooth is wired to an organ in your body. It's one of the most overlooked things I see people jump around. And this is something that is cheap, it's affordable, and you can get a great discount. It's like 20% using the code Beautifully Broken. So go over to silverbiotics.com and check them out.
Do you see PEMF having a role in the hospital and in medicine? Is there a place where you would insert it if you had a magic wand?
Oh, where would I not insert it? I mean, we're using it currently now in the mental health arena. There are orthopedic clinics that are using it for bone, joint, related issues across the board. So it's found some niche space, but arguably, as we look for things to move the needle of health, how long are we going to just anticipate surgery cutting it out of you, or big pharma pills that help you temporarily, but there is no long-term plan to get you off of those products either, right? So, there are reasons and good things that big pharma does, I feel like, from an assistance perspective for a lot of people, but across the board, if we don't take some of that health into our own hands and begin to shapeshift some of what we do in a lifestyle, things like adding PEMF, then we may not hope to ever have change,
Yeah, I think of the opioid epidemic, that was really, it's so, when you really get into it, and if anybody hasn't on the internet, it's so sad. And you could easily look at the people who lost their lives, but it's like, I look at those numbers, I'm like, those are sons and daughters and family members that people are still grieving and struggling with over prescription of opioids. And as a mechanism to diminish chronic pain, what a great tool to just have on hand. I often say these would be great in the ER. Mm-hmm. Even like the emergency situations when people come in and they're just overwhelmed with systemic pain. Is there anywhere else where you just think, oh my God, that's a no-brainer?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like pain and inflammation is probably a large population that presents in the acute healthcare arena, and of course is a chronic issue in, I think, most clinics. And the opioids were not the right solution for that, that's for sure. They thought maybe it was in the very beginning, but I mean, I think as we've all seen that evolve and watched it go through its full mechanisms, we kind of know it's not a great tool. It's a blunt instrument, if you ask me. It's masking something, but not completely, and then you withdraw, but you think that's because your pain is higher, so you take more because you think you're treating your pain, but really you're treating your withdrawal symptoms. Like it's a loop, and it's a downhill spiraling loop. So certainly chronic pain, inflammation, the orthopedic arena is the next probably biggest. We get knee, hip, shoulder, we get all kinds of bone and joint issues that are chronic pain that are maybe the gateway into addictions. That's problematic. So really from that perspective, that would be a great place for that to be in play. The diabetic ulcers are super exciting. I mean, these people have bad blood flow, right? We have glucose running wild and free, where in places that it shouldn't be. So it's toxic, it's acidic. You get skin breakdown from those processes. You get neuropathies from those processes. So you get these stinging, burning, fire, sort of sensations. And you can't really fix that. And so we watch these individuals go from, I've got a tiny sore, to now I have an ulcer, to now I've got an entire foot that has a problem, or, calf area, a lot of it is lower limb related. And then we start just amputating, which is miserable, So if we could fix the primary, we have a microvascular problem, right? We have an acidic environment because we're not building good nutrition into the space, taking debris out of the space, which causes then a lot more cell breakdown. If we can fix that flow problem, and skip an amputation, that's a game changer for almost anyone.
Yeah, it really is. And then let's just, I wasn't going to go here, but the idea of access, to these technologies, it's an investment to buy a PEMF device. I've always looked at these tools as well over the value of a car. I always quote the idea that the car sits in your driveway 98% of its life. You don't really use it, but will not think twice about taking out a lease on a $35,000, $40,000, what's a truck?
Right. Yeah. 50, 60,
50,
depending on what your
60.
whistles and bells you like.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot of times, right? I mean, the vacations we take or the TVs that we buy or,
Yeah.
the sound systems, the way we deck out a man cave or whatever, you want to call it. We dump a lot of money into things that seem important to us, right? Or fun or access points for us, that perspective. And yeah, I mean, arguably, if we paid that much attention to our health, it would be, it would be smart because a lot of these therapies, again, depending on how diligent you are in your personal life, personal hygiene, personal patterns, right? You can avoid a lot of these problems. But if you're not super great at all that stuff, or you're starting from, I already have a disease issue that I'm managing, right? From that perspective, you've got to build ground underneath yourself in order to be healthy again. So it becomes even more valuable to make the investment. And a lot of these machines aren't, super cheap, but arguably, if you could guarantee yourself healthy quality living and in addition to that longevity of living, I mean, that would seem worth it to me.
To me too. And then there's this other model. There's so many of these wellness centers popping up with the idea that you can access a library of technology, be it red light therapy, cryotherapy, PEMF therapy, all in one center with a little bit of a community vibe. What are your thoughts on that? Like an access point where it's really, for me, I just feel like more and more we have to open the door to more demographic, socio-demographic, economic equality across the board.
Yeah, I love that idea of the health and wellness, sort of like your gym concept, right? You walk in, you have a membership, you do these things, so many times a week or so many times a month, depending on what it is that you're own lifestyle is, if you're a massive athlete and you need to recover from something, or if you're just trying to maintain health, or if you're starting again from a position of not great health and you just need that additional, sort of, I can't get up and motivate myself where I've got to get to another point before I can do those things that I want to do. The biohacking that's going on is incredible, right? So if I can be smarter, not harder, in my approach to gaining health, then 100% in. So, a lot of these avenues are overly expensive to put into your own home, which, potentially is the easiest thing to do, to just roll out of bed and go do that before you jump into the next point of your day. It does take the commitment like it will take going to a gym. So some people need buddies systems for that. Some people like that community vibe that happens. Mm-hmm. Some people are self-motivated and just go no matter what. But so, if you're driving someplace to do it because you're in a membership format, then you still have access, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
I got to give a tip of a hat to Elaine's place Wi-Fi, correct?
Wi-Fi, yeah.
It's in Louisville, yes?
Correct.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have quite a unique offering of wellness technologies. And what is it like to get access to something? Are you aware of like the price point to go do PEMF a few times a week and some red lights? And
so, yeah, that's been an evolving sort of concept, right? So most of the time, the packages are if you wanted to do cryo so often or infrared or the, sleep saunas, that type of thing, you get PEMF in addition to those items. So it's not an upgrade, upcharge, that type of thing. It's an option. But yeah, it's super fun. You can do different clusters of things depending on what you need in your world, in your space. So, if you need the healing from the infrared, if you're just, I want to kick my metabolism up and lower my body's, immune reactivity levels, then cryo is perfect for that. We do a lot of compression therapy because that's just lymph movement and detox and, heal structures. So when we start combining these things on levels, again, you're ramping up on in a way that you end up biohacking the system and getting into better health or better weight loss or, just improved sleep, whatever that may be for you from that perspective. We get a lot of recovering individuals from surgeries and from, either abdominal, sort of core surgeries as well as then peripheral sort of, hip and knee and that type of stuff replacements, which is good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then also with that, there will be like an opportunity for them to franchise that and grow across the country at some point, yes?
That's the concept. Yeah. We'd love to get, like you said, broadening availability, getting more social involvement or access for people, super important. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan. I want to just mention, we're talking about all these great things that is associated with PEMF and wellness. And, I think it's once you go down the rabbit hole, and I'm sure people will say, oh, I listened to that podcast and I Googled and I was so overwhelmed with all the different things I found, right? And every single company or every label had the best. It's like, well, you need this one because it's low power. You need this one because it's got frequency. You need this one because it's going to like rock your socks off. And then all over the map, you're going to find all these different opinions. How do you navigate that as a consumer?
I think that's tricky because I think the milieu out there it's gotten competitive on a level and very maybe egocentric is maybe not quite the word I'm looking for, but power centric in the individual marketing for the product that's present, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of these machines are pretty similar. The technology is the technology. There's some variations on the theme, but arguably a lot of it is very structurally similar. So part of it is going to be, where's the reputation of the company?
Yeah.
How will they protect you if you buy their product, right? Do they guarantee their product? What services will they provide for you? What teaching or training will they provide for you? What post-purchasing ability do you have to have access into that company? So that matters, like I think anything might. We choose cars based on dealerships and who we're buying from, right? So this is kind of a similar concept on that level. And then it really is more about, some of it could be price point and then user sort of processes. So how often are you going to do it? How long are you going to do it at a time? What's the convenience of that? Is it buttons? Is it dials? Is it, if I'm using it, for my personal use, or if I'm going to start allowing other people to use it, what's the longevity of the product? So you kind of have to ask yourself some questions about what am I going to really do with it and how often am I going to do that? And kind of, do I like digital stuff or dials on things, or, there's just some setups that, make it interesting in that sense. And then, companies matter. So find a company that's doing it, on a high caliber level.
Yeah. And I just want to throw this in there. We talked about, when I did a podcast is almost 2 years ago with Elaine, we talked about the idea that there's a ringer and a hummer device, and the idea that some devices, there is actually a spark plug in the device and the waves stop and start. They go from nothing all the way up to 50 or 100 or whatever the frequency is. And so there's a clicking when you use the device. And then there'll be other low-powered devices that are known as hummers, where that wave never really stops. It might oscillate between 10 hertz, 5 hertz, whatever the technology is yielding. From your understanding, is there one that's better, high-powered, low power?
So it's a great conversation because there's a lot of debate about that. And the data is coming predominantly early on was all low power. And then later it has become more high power centric. So the lower power simply means that you need longer exposure to then shift cellular processes, from what I have read and interpreting. And the lower powered entities are more hummers. Like you don't feel the sensation particularly. You can sleep on top of them. They're probably much more functional as a mat structure instead of having a coil or a focal application unit for them. And they're great for daily, just tune up the physiology from that perspective. So, you go on a mat for, 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever a day, take a nap, whatever. There's some devices that you sleep on for lengths of time. They're that low in their intensity. And so, they're great for that just sort of daily, keep your body managed perspective. The higher powered tools are probably better in shorter lengths of exposure. They're there to move maybe the physiology a little bit faster. If you, have something broken and need it to heal, get inflamed and need the reduction of that inflammation, that swelling, whatever it may be, you're going to see that move and move rapidly when you use a high power device. And they have mats and those products as well, and they do work well with that. But they also have devices that you can then apply to a specific area, like an elbow or knee or, that type of a thing. You kind of focus what you're doing from an energy perspective into that one region. So, again, if you're looking at machines for you, you got to decide what you're going to really require, right?
Yeah.
From a long-term and a short-term perspective.
Yeah. I know there's the, and again, in this container, it's like and I just think it's so interesting and good to offer that at the end of the day, as a consumer, I always tell people, you got to go try it. You got to experience it. You have to see How's your body feel? What were your results? Nothing is going to, we can talk blue in the face, science and transmembrane potential and yada, yada, yada. But you got to go, what was your lived experience? Yeah, it's wild to me and sometimes it's distance, it's travel, and it's locality to devices. But I just can't, just like you would go drive a new car.
Right. Take it for a spin. Again, it's more one of the really nice sort of outcomes from trying it. Also, if you do this in several sessions, what we generically would say, hey, go do it 3 times, 5 times, 7 times, do a little stacking to see, hey, what really shifted for you.
Yeah.
Some people detox a little bit, so you kind of get that slumpy kind of feel sometimes. So important to rest and hydrate well when we're doing that. But one of the really great byproducts of being exposed is that almost everyone sleeps better. And sleep is such a huge thing that we're not doing well right now, So that alone in the world, if you think, oh, well, my knee kind of maybe felt better, maybe didn't feel better, but man, I slept like a rock, to me, that part's worth it as well. So you kind of got to look globally at what's happening for you, not just that one spot that you might have had the treatment on.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to just bring into the conversation, from my understanding, why I've always been drawn to it as one of my top biohacks. I say my gateway biohack is red light because it's a light. You stand in front of it, you take your clothes off, do it for 10 minutes, front and back, and you're done. But right up there is PEMF. And I've always been attracted to its safety record. Look at the safety record of aspirin or Tylenol. Even that's a little it sounds very benign, but I'm sure as an ER doctor, you're aware that can be a tool that somebody could misuse and have a bad result.
Red light therapy has been clinically shown to help increase energy, circulation, increase testosterone production, workout recovery, hair growth, improve the depth of fine lines and wrinkles. I love red light therapy. It works. You stand in front of a panel, naked, you turn it on, you repeat, you reap the benefits. I think the only challenge for the customer with so many lights on the market is how do I choose the right light for my body? I use LightPath LED for the following reasons. They include a 3-year warranty. They have panel options with pre-programmed frequencies or different pulse rates to add the benefit of pulse light to the body. Even Andrew Huberman, the famous neuroscientist from Stanford University, is celebrating the breakthroughs happening around 40 hertz. Well, this panel goes from 1 to 9,999. Finally, they go deep. LightPath LED is 60% near infrared, so that spectrum is the range that penetrates deeper into the tissues of the body. And finally, I have to mention after-purchase support. When you have a light and you purchase technology, you want to know how to best use it. And there is a 7,000-member group dedicated to helping you do that at LightPath LED. All of my mentors speak of mitochondrial dysfunction as the root cause of chronic illness. And red light is safe, it's effective, and it's an easy way to support full body wellness from home. So check out LightPath LED and use the code Beautifully Broken for a hefty discount in the checkout. Also, if you're interested in joining the LightPath LED team, join their affiliate program and get benefits from sharing a product that you absolutely love. Team LightPath, I'm out.
From your understanding, what's the safety record of PEMF? Because I've seen it to just be sort of unreally impeccable.
I've read a lot, not all of the data. So, there's that. But almost every study that I read through, there's basically no adverse events that are reported. So you occasionally hear someone who said, oh, yeah, that happened and I did PEMF and I got worse. And that's a possibility because I think all things have therapeutic windows, right? We test for that in medicine all the time. We want to know before a product is ever placed on the market, we want to know where does it really layer up into seeing a change in anything, whatever we're applying it to. And then through that change window, where does that change become toxic? So we have this sort of zone that we call the therapeutic zone that we're trying to target. So, you could dial anything up or down to get nothing or a lot of maybe not what you want from it. But, arguably that's not what most people are trying to do in healthcare. We're trying to find the therapeutic window. We're trying to find the part that makes you better and helps your body heal and manage its electrochemical gradients correctly, So most of the studies that I've seen have just not been able to reflect any adverse event profiles. So there's no labeling, whether it is a low power device or a high power device, that says, don't do it like this.
Yeah. Yeah. From my understanding, again, in my research, I'm not a medical doctor, but from everything I've ever read from all sides of the table, that conversation around the low power is not good or the high power is not good seems to be more of like a marketing voice. And it's usually, again, from my lived experience, you can trace that back to somebody's platform in which they're like pushing a product or a device. So I would always, again, if anybody hears this and you're like, oh my God, my uncle is in pain, or I know another person, my cousin is a paraplegic with terrible bed sores. I always, the second somebody tells me something's going on, I'm like, ooh, that would be a good thing for you to explore. Like go to find a practitioner in your area and let's make a connect. Let's make a super connect, which I do all the time in Austin, Texas, now that I have this great side room. I've only been here 3.5 weeks, and before it was a 1-bedroom, glorified 1-bedroom. It was really a 600 square foot studio. And now I have this side room with all these devices in it. And like literally there's 12 to 13 people coming every week. They know how to get in, they come use it. And across the board, the testimonials are pretty much a wow factor, across the board, like, thank you. I feel great. My life is better. This is really cool. I'm glad I'm here. It's really, really neat.
Right. Which I think, when you do PEMF, especially with red light combos, I love that combination because, our electrons move, but the messaging that they're relaying between themselves and their chemistry is through light that is emitted. And so the combination of those two things used together is so healing, so powerful, especially when we're in the right range of light that the body can actually, absorb and then use as its energy force, right? Because we are literally just energy and mass. That's what we are. So when we can move those things correctly, the systems take care of themselves, which is pretty fantastic. So
yeah, did an ER doctor just say that we're light bodies?
I think, yes, that's exactly what I did.
All right. Okay, so everybody grab your steering wheels. In a little more of a physics way, cells communicate through light.
They do. That's what they do.
And magnetism and energy. And it's wild that we work this way.
Isn't it, though?
That we're these energetic beings.
Yeah.
I think that's when I started to understand this concept, that because the question was, when I would talk to people about it, something I was really interested in, let's just say like frequency therapy or sound healing. And they're like, oh, what do you mean sound healing? Like, what's that going to do to you? I was like, well, our whole universe exists on an electromagnetic spectrum. It's all vibration. The fingernails, the eyes, the hair, the stairwell, they're all oscillating at a unique vibration. It's all sound. And I feel like the first person I read an article that they discovered that, they were like, quickly grabbed their chair. They're like, why am I not falling through this object?
That's awesome.
That I exist at this different density. So the potential over the next 20 years, the next 30 years of us to really harness and embrace discussion. I think discussion topics around energy medicine, sound frequency, pulse electromagnetics, light therapy has the potential to really change the game when we understand and open ourselves to, what is the therapeutic dose? How can we tweak and tune this a little more? I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Interestingly, medicine started kind of in this arena and found itself wandering down a different path. But, a lot of the great explorations with light and sound and energy were within that medical zone. And we kind of tabled and then put in the cabinet that conversation, and we became much more interested in surgeries and in medication use. And so, we thought we'd won some things. And so discoveries of antibiotics and those types of things just led to more and more sort of pill structures, and the surgery arena opened up and we got better at it and people started to survive it. So we thought, well, hey, we could just continue to do these things, which is super interesting. And I do think it's gonna circle back around to more of the energetic healing cycles that we have known about, just have not employed within the healthcare arena. And the conversation will need to be deep and it will need to be rigorous, because so much of the science, if you will call that science within the medicine arena, is that very standard bench research, replicable, make it happen and then reverse the process and then do it again, and be able to do that in multiple places in different labs with different people doing it, so that it's this process that we can consider safe,
Yeah.
that will be, in the end, as we like to say, FDA approved.
Yeah.
Big words when we start looking at how we're going to apply things. And so from a PMF perspective, the field is going to need to unify. We're going to have to stop sort of bickering about my product, your product, and things along those lines. We're going to need to, if we intend to be able to use this broadly within the medicine construct, we're going to have to get together and decide on some things that gives us some standards that are safety as well as therapeutic in nature. And we're going to need to band together to get indications so that we have research that's deep enough to be able to say accurately what we think is really happening. And I feel like right now there's a little bit of the, you're high, this is low, this is not the right oscillating frequency, this is, blah, 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 blah. But we're maybe not focused as much on the data as we are on the other side of just getting marketing information out to people.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So
Yeah.
work better as a field to advance
Yeah.
the field realistically.
Yeah, I totally agree. And but I do believe in it. And it's why I invest a lot of my personal time in advocating for a lot of these technologies that I have had enough experiences at this point. Wound healing, eczema. Oh my, if I had another person send me an eczema, and I don't mean eczema, I don't mean dry skin. I mean like plaque eczema, like full leg from some of the red light therapies, and it be gone. And I love that example because the red light didn't heal the plaque eczema. The body simply had enough energy in that area to do what the body does. What a cool concept.
Right. Totally cool concept. So Verlinda treated a 69-year-old lady. She'd had a knee injury when she was significantly younger and couldn't run. So she had 3 sessions and was able to run after that. So there's some game changer stuff, across the board that you can see. And, we look at eczema and skin plaques and those types of things. I mean, your skin is one of the largest detoxifiers of your body. So if you have these types of issues, arguably detoxing is maybe something you should look at heavily, because if your skin is clogged or blocked or is processing those types of things all the time, you have something built in you that needs to be shifted. And sometimes that shift has to be energetic. Sometimes it has to be through PMF exposures or red light therapies or saunas or those types of things, where it can actually begin to loosen up that stuff and finally, check it out.
Yeah. That's a question I get often. People are like, well, why do I need that? Why can't I just eat clean and do this and do this? And my thought is, well, if we get all our toxins from nature, then we can get only our healing from nature. But the world that we've designed, some of these toxins, like you said, forever chemicals, unique levels of glyphosate, which is a derivative of Agent Orange, which is shutting down enzymatic processes in the body. And your skin is not going to be your friend if you're full of these toxins, these forever chemicals. So we'll need outside of the box modalities or heavy lifting like PEMF, like red light panels. And I guarantee you, whether it's your belief system or not, if you're on the planet, on some level, we're struggling with this. Everybody, whether I've run enough. And here's the great thing is, people at home, you can always ask your functional health coach. I was about to say your medical provider. Not every medical provider will run a glyphosate urine collection test for you. And so you can see how much glyphosate you're emitting each day. But I've run enough to see how high it is. And it's shocking.
It is shocking.
Yeah.
And it's exposures that we don't, how long have you eaten that clean? We were talking about chemicals that never go away. Were you clean when you were 12 or 18? Or what'd you do in college? Because most of us wandered off that path, arguably, across the board from a health perspective. I'm not going to name names or activities. However, it's a real thing, and then it's just the daily, like, how stressed are you, right? Like, how bad is your chemistry, because you've got all of these things we're micromanaging throughout our world, on a regular basis. The chemistry matters. And probably the biggest silent killer is stress. You can run every day or do your gym activity. You can eat clean and healthy. You can, get in bed and stay there for 8 hours. but do you really sleep? Or how do you really process and function and think during your daytime? Because that changes everything about the communication pattern, the chemistry that's going on in your system. So it needs an assist.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. The other thing I just want to mention here when we talk about variables, it always comes up in the conversation, it's mindset for me. I think we forget that how powerful the mind is, the belief system of what could happen with some of these tools. And we went back to timeline. How long has that malady been in the terrain? If it's 10 years, 15 years, the neurons of the brain are firing and wiring in that way, and they are creating this powerful, powerful network. I find sometimes even when a person is experiencing a chronic infection, maybe the infection has been knocked down, it's not even there anymore, but the body continues to react to other similar entities around mold, spores, dust, maybe it's the common flu, and all of a sudden there's this flaring of the symptoms in this terrain. And it can be this cellular memory. So that's something I think we also have to take into account. And that's not work a practitioner or a hospital, I don't think, is ever going to do for us. I think that's like the work we do at home.
I would argue that's true. And again, getting your system tuned up is one thing, right? The physiology itself, but mentally managing it is the second half of that process, right? So, and it's always interesting when we look at what do we react to and how strongly do we react to that? When we think about just even in social settings, right? What do I get embarrassed by and how quickly does that, polarize me on some level? Or, when you think of something and it connects to something so rapidly and your emotion totally change and follow that fast. I think our immune system has that same memory, right? And it's got the sort of liquid side and it's got the cellular surface side. So we have two different constructs that work together to make all of that occur. And if we are kind of more hyper immune, hyper alert, hyper vigilant on that level, then we do that cross reactivity between entities creates the same overload of information within the immune structures. And you will get sicker faster or have a stronger response that takes longer, to sort of mitigate across time when that's happening. So, again, getting your body tuned cellularly can help manage that, just dampening some of that over aggressive immune structure and, getting it to not use its outside voice to kind of talk at a soft level is sometimes what we need.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. As we go into this next, we're going into 2023 and we're talking about some of these tools kind of evolving into the medical space. Can you talk a little bit about aura wellness and this idea that there might be some cool new tools coming for this, like we said, maybe a hospital setting, maybe the practitioner setting?
We're hopeful. We have looked through the FDA criteria, so we're looking at class 2 devices, which would be great, which becomes then usable within a clinic setting. We are going to go with some of the higher powered machines so that they are office-based used. We will have frequencies that are specific for, disease criterias. So we'll have structures that will say, if you have a diabetic ulcer, this is the way that we're going to manage this. This is the frequency, the length of time, the number of treatments, et cetera. So we're hoping to get some data down that will be valuable and replicable so that this can become something that, is used more broadly across those terms. Again, just looking at access, how can we get people off operating room tables and keeping extremities and, or healing bone injuries faster? Or, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the breast cancer arena with estrogen use and trying to dampen the estrogen that the periphery makes. But most of the medications we use for that are really bone painful. So just looking at mitigating some of that pain and inflammation cycle so that you can continue treatment that will help, give you lifespan across the board. So yeah, we've got a lot of work in front of us, but we're trying to do our best.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, we are too.
I'm excited we get to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
What an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you imagine back like 600 years? It's like everybody's just like working themselves to like to death, except like the royal family. Like nobody, like we're sitting in a home, there's a kitchen, clean water, television, any program we want on it. We're recording this. We're going to upload the data. There's a trampoline outside. It's pretty wild, right?
It is pretty good.
Yeah, you guys are going to get into an engine-drawn carriage. It's going to take you anywhere you want to go. You have unlimited funds to fill that with energy. It's like wild to me.
Yeah.
Like
Vastly different. Mm-hmm.
different. It's like
Yeah.
everybody, not everybody, but a grand proportion of the people on the planet are like, we're living like royalty. Then I'm also aware at the same time that like our joy of being human or the human experience is definitely not paced with technology's advancements.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of, social medias that should be connecting, and I don't know. There seems to be a lot of dissent, a lot of separating, not coming together on, which
Yeah.
is disappointing to see. But maybe we'll learn. We should.
Yeah. That's the work. That's the whole podcast. That's what I want to do. That's it. We're bringing awareness. We're going to open new doors, more conversations. And I think you do it one by one.
Yeah.
I think we underestimate the power that one person can do. It's like that ripple effect that we're going to have when we throw the bay rock in the pond.
I think that's where COVID was so damaging for everyone, when we isolated and we didn't have that one-on-one connection, conversation, intimacy on that level. I feel like we've ended up in a place where we're more divided than I think we've been in a very long time in our populations. And I feel like part of that was because we were isolated, because we didn't get out and be together and kind of do what we're supposed to do as humans, collaborate and, connect.
Yeah. At events like MagnaCon and Upgrade Conference that I'm going to in a couple of weeks, I'm going down to Florida to do another root cause retreat with Dr. Jess and Dr. Jaban. I love these events. It's the energy at an event. It's like if anybody hasn't been to a wellness event, the ones I just mentioned are great. And it's just you pick up so much more than just the data and the information. You get this vitality. I always believe things like, the social constructs or the dampening that happened in the pandemic. I try to take good or looking at it as good or bad. And I do believe that the arrow gets pulled back with some tension. We're going to let it go. We'll at some point, I think we will swing back the other way. Yeah. Closing out our podcast, because I want to let you and your partner, Verlinda, go to dinner. If you had a magic wand, what would be something that you'd love to come into fruition, to the physical, in the realm of pulse electromagnetic field in the next 5 years?
I would love for the awareness of it to be broader scale. I feel like every time we introduce it to someone and it changes their life, they're like, wow, where was this? Right? And so I feel like if the awareness could be elevated, we would have more people accessing and recovering and healing and, shifting their worlds in a way that would be good and productive for them in their daily activities of living, and particularly in their longevity or just in their ability to get up and go and do what they need to do, right? So I feel like if we could project awareness, that would be phenomenal.
That's great. I got another good one for you as an ER doctor. You actually, I'm going to set you up. You get like the super screen that like goes through time and space. And as an ER doctor, you get to say a message to the people of planet Earth. As someone who sees people come into these emergency situations, what would you like to tell people if you could offer them a wellness tip?
Always wear helmets. No, I'd say that jokingly and not jokingly all at one time.
I believe you.
Pay attention to your own health. Take responsibility for your own health. Don't wait for my permission to protect your body or to propagate your body on that level. Be as interested in your own health as you are what brand of shoes you're going to be buying or, the next thing that you're shopping for is, because we're ignoring something that in the end is probably the most important thing that you haven't known.
Yeah, this body. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I celebrate you. I celebrate the work that you're doing. I celebrate the clarity that you bring to this topic, it's very dense, especially if this is the first time you've heard this. If you're a longtime listener, I think this will be even more exciting is great value as we go into this topic again. More to come. And we sat down today with Dr. Amanda. Thank you for being on the show.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
A lot of fun.
It was an absolute pleasure. Bye, team.
Team, thank you for creating a wave of momentum that is driving Season 5 of the Beautifully Broken podcast. My heart thanks you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed today's show, head over to Apple Podcasts and now Spotify. Spotify is new, and you can leave a review. 5 stars if you loved it. And before you go, I have something really important I need to offer. There are 2 ways we can build this relationship. The first is to join my membership program at buymeacoffee.com/FreddySetGo. You get early access to all the podcasts, bonus episodes, discounted consults, and free webinars covering all the wellness technologies. The second is to support beautifully-broken.world. That's right, I have a brand new website and new store, beautifully-broken.world. Listed on here are all the wellness tools, supplements, educational courses, and products that I absolutely love. Most of them offer significant discounts by clicking the link or using the code. Please know that they don't cost you anything extra. And at the same time, they do support the podcast through affiliations. What's that? I just got a message from my lawyers, my internet team of lawyers. They wanted me to tell you that the information on this podcast is for educational purposes only. By listening, you agree not to use the information found here as medical advice. Do you agree? Yes, you agree. To treat any medical condition in yourself or others, always consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. Finally, our closing. The world is changing. We need you at your very best. So always take the steps to be upgrading your energy, your mindset, and your heart. Remember, while life is pain, putting the fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I love you. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel.